Hello, I'm Becky Fleig. I'm the Director for Graduate Medical Education at TriHealth in Cincinnati, Ohio. I'm also an AIAMC member. I serve on the Annual Planning Committee and as well as the Educational Planning Committee, and I welcome all of you to our podcast today. I have the great honor and pleasure to be talking to Dr. Carl Patow today. Dr. Patow is, after he fulfilled his career as a head and neck surgeon and a medical educator, university leader, and healthcare quality advocate, he retired from medicine and completed a master's degree in fine arts at the Virginia Commonwealth University in 2019. He's an artist who creates digital art about significant contemporary issues, including inequity, the environment, and societal forces shaping masculinity. Um, the digital photos rework and reconfigure images through photographic layering techniques. He also volunteers as an art teacher for middle schoolers, and he has a studio in Richmond, Virginia. So he's grateful for his wife, the support he receives from his wife, Sue, and their ever-loving dog, Pungo. So Dr. Patow, we're very excited to have you today. As we wrapped up the annual meeting and the National Initiative meeting in New Orleans just over a month ago, we talked a lot about these topics of inequity. We talked about the National Initiative projects that we wrapped up in National Initiative 9, and we also launched National Initiative 10. So today we want to spend just a little bit of time with you as one of the co-founding chairs of the National Initiative. And we just want to ask you, how did the AIAMC National Initiatives get started? And what was kind of the planning process behind getting these great initiatives off the ground?
Well, thank you first, Becky, for that kind introduction and for the opportunity to participate in this podcast. Yes, it's, I think, exceptionally rewarding that the AIAMC national initiatives have continued for so long. So I think it's interesting to note that many of the people who were there at the beginning are no longer part of the organization, and that many of the people who are now in the organization really don't know where the national initiative started from. And so let's start there. I think just a little bit before the national initiatives got going, there's a little bit of history that may be of interest. Really, in the beginning of thinking about residents being included in quality improvement started around 2001. And there was a book that was published by the Institute for Healthcare Improvement called Crossing the Quality Chasm. And that was released in August of 2001. And it really caught the attention of a lot of leadership of medical education, hospital leadership. And it included in its chapters a broad review of quality improvement approaches that could be employed to improve care for patients, particularly in hospitals and healthcare systems. It was also included major cultural hurdles that at that time there was concern that even, for example, physicians or healthcare leaders would want to start thinking systematically about quality of care. What was pretty much left out of that book was the role of graduate medical education. And it's only until the very last chapter that they start to suggest that, oh, wait a minute, maybe residents and other learners could be included in the quality improvement process. But that book really got people thinking about quality improvement. Even until it took about 5 years for the movement to catch on that we really need to systematically look at quality. And it wasn't until 2006 that a statement was made by Jim Conway, who was the vice president at that time of the Institute of Healthcare Improvement, that really residents are invisible in the patient safety journey. And at our AIAMC meeting at that time, we had a slide that we put together, where's Waldo? Where are residents in quality improvement and patient safety because they really weren't part of that journey at all. So in 2006, the AIAMC board decided that this was really important, particularly with the mission of the organization, that we include residents in quality improvements. And a retreat was held in January of 2007, where we discussed how residents might be included and what would be the process. And we got a sense that there was a real excitement about this issue. And so the first national initiative was launched 2 months later. And we had 19 hospitals and healthcare systems that participated in that first NI1. One of the challenges was, what would this look like? How would we engage hospitals? What would be the format? Would it be a workshop? Would it be I don't know if we had webinars at that time. So, fortunately, a few years prior to that, I had been given a fellowship by an organization called the Bush Foundation, nothing to do with President Bush, to improve my own knowledge of leadership. And I went to Whidbey Island, which is just off of Seattle, Washington, for a series of leadership retreats. And those retreats were the same people involved in each of 4 quarterly retreats. We'd learn about something, we'd give a little assignment to do at home, we'd come back 3 months later, and we'd talk about what we learned, and then we'd have another assignment. And over the course of the year, we really bonded together and learned a great deal. So that seemed to be a working model for groups of people who really wanted to commit to learning together. And then right about that time, Paul Batalden and David Leach being the leader of the ACGME, and Paul Batalden being a wonderful thought leader in quality improvement, came to Health Partners, where I was the director of the Institute for Healthcare Improvement, or the Institute for Medical Education. And they were interested in trying out a learning exercise with our physicians that had to do with leadership. And I said, well, look, let's try this quarterly approach and see what happens. Well, it worked. And so fortunately, we had a ready template at that time that we could apply to the first national initiative. It would be 4 quarterly meetings with the same groups of people, learning from each other and learning about quality improvement and how to engage residents in that system. We had the first 3 quarterly meetings, and then it became very clear that we just needed some extra time before we did that 4th one. And people were excited about what they were doing. They were making progress, but they knew they wouldn't be able to accomplish their goals in 3 months. So we extended that out. That was fine. And that model has persisted all the way through the 9, and now will be also in the 10th AIAMC National Initiative. I would call out Andy Epstein, who was the co-chair of the first NI. We had a very strong leadership group, 19 hospitals, and we fortunately had the financial support from Health Partners and from Pfizer to really make it happen. We also had the Institute for Healthcare Improvement represented. Initially, they were a little skeptical. I think they were not sure that residents and quality improvement would be something that would really work out, but they turned around, and by the time we launched NI1, they were full supporters and really helped us with our curriculum.
Dr. Patow, that's an amazing story. I have been involved in 7 of the 9 national initiatives, and I really did not know that's how the first national initiative started. But it is amazing also to me that completing 9 of them, so many of the same principles do exist, as you mentioned. The cohort group that you learned in your leadership workshop, as well as the quarterly touch bases that the AIAMC has put into place. So participants are meeting deadlines and making progress on their projects. So easily, these types of projects and this type of work can be pushed aside. But I know from my own experience in our organization that we know that we need to be held accountable from the AIAMC standpoint. So we're making progress in getting these projects done. It's also very interesting to me about the Institute for Healthcare Improvement and IHI. They're such the experts in healthcare quality improvement. And not recognizing, residents as part of the journey up front, because the residents are so immersed in patient care. And I obviously know that philosophy has changed greatly, and now there is a good value in having the residents involved in quality improvement and patient safety. But it's interesting to think back in 2000 and in the early 2000s that they weren't even thought about. But as we all know in graduate medical education, it's continuing to climb that mountain of all of the value these residents in training are providing. And I know from the AIAMC and having them as well as medical students involved, it's improved our educational content that we have. So it's great to see, the AIAMC all the way back with National Initiative 1 really considering that and making an imprint as we have moved forward through so many different topics of these projects.
And I would add that we were out front as an organization ahead of some of the much bigger national organizations as far as including residents in quality improvement. And I would attribute that to the fact that the AIAMC is smaller, that people know each other, and that we're very nimble. And we were able to put together a program very quickly. There wasn't a lot of bureaucracy involved, and make it happen about 2 years before some of the big players in graduate medical education were able to start their programs.
Yeah, yes, most definitely. Dr. Patow, when you guys started this National Initiative 1 and went through those first kind of growing pains of trying to figure out the process, even if it wasn't developed from scratch, which is so also so resourceful of you taking a different model. But did you ever believe that after developing the first one that we would be on our journey to be starting the 10th one?
I think that's quite remarkable. And when you look at the topics that have been addressed in the first 9, really it's a wide-ranging set of topics that have embraced, health equity and well-beings, the clear process, faculty development, interprofessional relationships and training. I mean, it's really, to me, very gratifying to see that it's not been narrowly focused on just residents and the OR or whatever, but really has expanded into many sites of care and addressing some, I think, rather challenging issues.
I would agree. I think it's outstanding to hear the success stories of these projects continuing on in organizations as well. I know many sessions for the AIMC educational content is, where are we now with these projects, or if we're conversing at any of our annual meetings, we're talking about the continuation of the work. And I know for, again, my organization, so, these types of projects, sometimes they get started, but at the end of the reporting period, they do not carry on. But looking through the list of the ones that I have been involved in, again, 7 of the 9, over half of them, we still have a presence in our organization and has made an impact, which I think is what the return on the investment is from an organizational standpoint. And I also think that it speaks to GME leadership within these programs, but also just the ongoing education of the residents who may be involved in the project. They graduate out and they may leave. But the consistency is, again, the model and the framework that we have created as we've developed the foundation of these projects. But again, I know that we've been very successful in making a difference in our organization, as I know many other AIAMC members have as well.
And the idea that incorporating residents in that training, and then they become, of course, attendings, and it's self-fulfilling that they have an opportunity to train additional residents. And so, it's always gratifying to me when I hear a resident or a young attending say, "Well, have we done a timeout?" Or when they've learned something and they take that into their practice, and they're also training the next generation.
Yes, yes. Dr. Patow, you've had such an amazing career in your lifetime, and held so many different types of positions, whether it's just not just, but being a head and neck surgeon in a very complex specialty. You've been a medical educator working with physicians and students. You've held leadership positions in a university setting in complex academic centers. You've been a healthcare quality advocate, and then you've transitioned into being even an artist on some of the topics that probably you've got inspiration from your medical career. But if you reflect upon your participation and leadership in the AIAMC, what would be one descriptor of the organization that comes to mind if you were talking to an audience that is not a current member now?
Oh my! I think the AIAMC is unique in that the membership, the number of members is they're close knit enough that you really get to know people, and I think that's so valuable. Seeing at meetings people that you recognize, can immediately talk about what's happening in your organization, knowing that uh, all organizations have issues, and knowing that you're going to see those people again. Sometimes in much larger organizations, you'll see them fleetingly in a meeting, and you sort of lose track of them, and that's a different feeling in the AIAMC. Having the national initiatives as sort of a backbone for quality improvement and including residents also helps, because everyone who's involved in those issues then has a common platform to come together and say, well, what are you doing about this? Or what are you doing that? So I would say that it's the ability to talk with people who are of similar sized systems and hospitals, and really get some perspective on how they're working with issues, and sharing your own as well.
Yes. I mean, I couldn't agree more. The colleagues that we have in the AIAMC are above and beyond the most valuable relationships that I have experienced in my career. You go to like the ACGME meeting, which is a wealth of information, but you are one of 3,000 people. If even when you've been in the field for a very long time, but it's so nice to see your colleagues from the AIAMC. They know you by name. We're talking about the issues that are very specific to independent academic medical centers. I know it's only an email away if I ever come up with a problem or I need a template for something that we're doing. I just cannot agree more. The close-knit community that we have is so valuable to the work that we do in graduate medical education.
Becky, before we sign off, I just think it would be good to take a moment to recognize some of the accomplishments of the national initiatives over the first 9. Over 70 hospitals and health systems have participated. There's been 1,500 individuals and 268 quality improvement projects. That's an incredible commitment. And as we mentioned just a few minutes ago, that has led to, I think, meaningful and sustainable outcomes in patient care and quality of care. So I think that's a major achievement for the organization, and to see that the 10th iteration is going forward is just wonderful.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Dr. Patow, it's been a pleasure talking to you today. I cannot thank you enough for your time to give us a little bit of historical perspective on these national initiatives that so many of us are involved. And hopefully, we will grow above the 30 plus participants, participating organizations, excuse me, that we currently have in the national initiative. I know our organization is very excited about National Initiative 10 and the clinical learning environment, which is so critical at a time in graduate medical education. So we appreciate your time. We appreciate your knowledge. Is there anything else you would like to say to our audience today before we sign off?
No, just I'd like to thank you, Becky, for the opportunity to participate in this, and I wish the AIMC best of luck with their next national initiative.
Great, thank you.